Yo, everybody, what it do? We got UFC 310 coming at y'all this weekend. It's a pretty stacked card. We just came from Old China. She delivered. This one's going to deliver. Can't wait to break it down. But before I do, just like to remind everybody there's a zero biasism on this channel. We like to call it as we see it. You know, knee up the middle, bow, bow. Shavkat gonna be knocking Gary the fuck out. Anyways, we just keep it down the middle, y'all. Sad I don't have that hat. My dad actually still wears that shit, so I ain't got it for the video. But y'all, I'm so pumped for this. I'm done fucking around. Let's get into the breakdown. All right, so kicking things off, we got Kennedy stepping back up because, I mean, hey, Chris knocking himself out with that Humpty Dumpty fucking jump up, down, lose my foot and shit. Kennedy took 0 damage, so he's fresh. He's in, you know, he's always going to be in shape now we're in heavyweight. He doesn't have to make any kind of cut. That's just the benefit of not being one of these heavyweight blobs. So, Kennedy, do I expect him to go for a belt anytime soon? No. But I do expect this dude to hit top 10. Easily that top 15. I think he's going to be able to set at range and kind of work people down, work with the leg kicks. He's good about mixing it versus some of these blobby strikers. And you probably don't want to clinch up with him too because he's got pretty good knees as well. So looking forward to that one. Next on the card, we got a longtime vet, The Carpenter, taking on Chase Hooper. Stylistically, hey, I love the matchup. Father at time standpoint, yeah, it's a bit tough for Clay, but you know, the sport at the end of the day would be what it is without him. I believe he had his entry in like 2006. Hooper, he's had, you know, his share of success in rough goes, but he's evolving, he's young, and from what we've seen recently, he's made the improvements he's needed to in his weakest areas, being his stand-up. So I do see this being within the distance, unfortunately, for Clay. I like the idea of a dry submission. I think Hooper's a bit more technical for Clay. He can't come at him and do this whole, I'm going to charge at you and put my neck out there. And at the same time, from what we've seen, the improvements are nice enough on the feet that I don't think Clay really wants to be at range with Hooper, especially with how long and length he is for the weight division. No, but for real, credit where credit's due. Clay's been a gamer. He's been around. The style in which he fights in, very hard to uphold. He's been doing it since 2006, I believe, just at the UFC alone. So things have evolved. It's evolved with him in front of his eyes. And yeah, he helped build this shit. So get a video ready, UFC. If you can do it for Gomez and not Stipe, don't be fucking up on Clay too, or you're going to get a bunch of us real mad, especially if you're putting money into stupid ass OnlyFans girls to promote Power Slap. Like, put your money in a team where, you know, the real fans are at. Gamers like this, fans like me. Quit doing this dumb shit. Also, I'm going to be making up a bingo card. I think the first few slots are going to be Lucas comes walking out to that, like, Russian baby cradle sounding shit. And then, yeah, Clay retired potentially. So moving up the card, though, we got Max Griffin taking on Michael Chiesa. I think this fight ends via finish as well. I think Max hits Chiesa and he sits and realizes that fighting ain't as fun as it used to be anymore and that he's never really going to achieve the top rank, so why the fuck is he doing this and having that Anthony Smith contemplation running through his head and says, yeah, I like podcasts and sport anchoring a lot more. And Max walks away with a knockout or TKO. So, and if that doesn't happen, then Chiesa proves me wrong, grabs Max, throws him to the ground, chokes his ass out. So, don't see this one going to the judges, but I don't think either guy's really going to do much with a win. So, moving up the card, more exciting fight, in my opinion. We got Joshua Van taking on Cody Durden. Both these dudes bring it. Both these dudes crack. Van having a little bit more, mortality in the UFC from originally his debut. I mean, first off, credit to Charles Johnson. That dude's been on an absolute tear, staying active. And yeah, one of those guys, one of those gatekeepers. And the flyweight kind of needs that because out of all the divisions, they had some of the most prospects. And I still think Josh was still up there with some of them, but is he quite at the level of Steve Ercik and Tatsuro Taira? No, not quite. But if the UFC ever opened up 115-pound atom weight, you bet your ass Joshua Van would be one of those guys leading that shit. He, despite being a bit underdog in physicality, is one of the biggest dogs in the yard. No, is he? Now, moving up the card, we're going to be poking some fucking eyeballs out with these old school gloves. We got Weidman coming back. Oh, but for real, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. It's ridiculous. They don't call shit. Blows to the back of the head, kicks to the groin repeatedly. Cage grabbing is the biggest one I see that I'm just constantly screaming at. What's crazy about this to me is you have your old gloves back. You're a veteran. You know how to strike without extending the fingers. There's zero bullshit. If we come out and we see a literal combo with eye pokes, that ain't coincidental at this point anymore. But again, I get it. They're not calling it. So nothing, no harm, no foul. That's the Chandler pill, right? Let's all just hop on and take this shit. For real, it's even funny that there's a prop win via DQ. When's the last time you saw a UFC DQ? Sterling getting his fucking belt from Jan? Or wait, was that the dude who got bit and later tattooed it? I don't know. Anyways, Weidman by eye poke added to the bingo card. That much I can guarantee will happen in this fight. Next on the card, one of the only UFC fighters to follow me, but that's alright because he's also one of my favorites. The Butcher, Brian Battle, taking it to Rude Boy. I see this matchup being excellent for Battle as he's the one wanting to come forward. Rude Boy's not going to be able to sit there and manage his range and kind of pick and prod the way he's used to. Battle won't have that shit. In fact, I can see Battle taking the fight to the ground, working via submission, working the new 12-6. Like, Battle's a gangster. He's going to get the fight within the distance more times than not. I'm up there partying a little too loud, so now I'm kicked downstairs. But it's all right. I'm down here chilling with my Bob. I'm just trying to vision this fight, and I see an elbow over the top. Fucking wow. Rude Boy going down. Timber. I'm not seeing the prop yet, but double method on Battle, submission, knockout. I'm going to throw that with Shavkat. And then mess around with that third leg, probably Pantoja, double method. Could work a couple decision knockout methods like Reyes or Kennedy, a couple other locks here on the card. Next on the card, waking from his slumber, we got Mavzar taking on Aljo. Saw some Page crying, well-established Page, may I add, crying. Aljo's not on the main card. This is your former champ. This is for a top-ranked featherweight position. Yes, it is, but here's the thing. Mavzar, I think, is being slightly penalized for being so inactive despite holding the rankings and fucking up matchmaking, I'm sure, for Hunter and Dana. And simply put, Aljo sucked the air out of fucking UFC 300, which is hard to do, seeing historically it's one of the greatest cards of all time. Now, what's interesting about the matchup is it is stylistically interesting. Aljo isn't going to be able to play it safe and attempt to backpack and ride the hips and pretend this is some college wrestling match. Mavzar is generally one of those guys that's winning in control time, peppering the strikes. Even if you ain't welting in damage, he's doing enough to win by decision, which is mostly what he does. Looking at the guy, based on where he's from, you think he'd be more of a killer? Dude's great at getting a judge scorecard. Now, I think Aljo winning this would set him up in an interesting match, maybe with Diego Lopez. If the fight for Emmett falls through, I could see maybe Sterling being a backup to that fight, right? Let's catch up on bingo squares too. So for Brian Battle's fight, he's going to win. In his post-fight interview says fuck at least twice. And Mavzar and Aljo get booed at least twice by the crowd during their fight. Next on the card, we got the return of Vincent Luque taking on Greenbow. Kind of an odd match. Again, would have loved to obviously seen the fight with Nick Diaz, but more so as a backup, have another vet in mind. Greenbow at the same time, very hot and cold with his performances. If Luque was to make a return and have a fairly recent active fighter under his resume to try to make a push for whether that be more gatekeeping fights or whatever, this would be one of those that is achievable for him. Do I expect it to happen? No. Do want to take a moment and say, it's a lot of recent news to have some of the greatest idols of all time, not just MMA, but UFC, struggle with their demons in life and shit. And these vets, again, the game would not be the same what it is today without them. I wish that maybe these guys staying active, better, mindset, better mentality for the decisions they're making and so forth would be a factor. Just saying this, I hope Nick and Connor, I hope these men are well in life. And I wish these were the vets back here fighting these vet fights we've always wanted, matchups that never got to happen that are like almost too good to be true. So next fight on this card's a doozy, believe you me. Anthony Smith taking on Dominic Reyes. I just see Reyes finishing Anthony Smith, quite honestly, and I would love to see this next podcast with Michael Bisping try not to sit there and let his eye just twitch unpurposefully as he's like, buddy, I'm not trying to say this is you, but, if you're not going to win the fight, you might as well get the fuck out of there instead of getting CTE. We're going to have that fight not go the distance. Also, if the props under 2.5, we'll take that gladly. If it's under a round and a half, we may have to look at those props and think about it a little more. If you've been with me since the prelims, I appreciate you watching all the way up to this point. If you're just joining in for the main card, what is up? I just hit y'all with some bingo slots, some breakdowns, some rants. I'm ready to do it again. Main card time, UFC 310. You already know what it is. Next on the card, I got Nate the Train Landwehr taking on Dooho Choi. Both dudes are going to meet in the center of the octagon, stand and bang. And I got this fight ended by knockout in round 1 or 2. If it doesn't end by knockout, you can bet that this is going to arguably be one of the fight of the nights because neither guy is going to give up in this exchange. So look out for that one. Make it a bingo slot too. Fight of the night. Next on the card, we share the same last name, but I think the Earth's round and made by aliens, and he doesn't. We got Bryce Mitchell taking on Croak'n Gracie. Bryce Mitchell should win this fight 9 out of 10 times, and no, I'm not speaking out of Chandler mathematics. I think that Bryce has him easily in the stand-up, and for anyone who thinks that Bryce doesn't have stand-up, believe it or not, he rocked Ilya more than anybody else really has, minus Jai Herbert's fucking knee. So, all right, and he fought some killers. So just throwing it out there, Bryce has that farmer boy strength. He knows how to live a good, honest life, baling hay, doing shit with rocks and fields and all the above. The dude just cornbread fed. Now, Gracie, he's Gracie. He's been sworn into this shit since he was a baby. He didn't really have a choice. Has his game developed as a full package MMA fighter? No. Can he use amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappling techniques to win in MMA fights? Yes. Not against Bryce Mitchell. The dude's got great enough wrestling to survive that. I'm not saying it's impossible. Guys, look at the levels of opposition. Mitchell's proven himself there. However, he did come from a brutal KO back in 23 against Emmett. One of the most brutal knockouts of all time. If you want to talk about the aftermath, I know we've been spoiled this year. Just go back, look back last year and look at that knockout and the way that Bryce literally had to come back from the dead. So, amen. I haven't looked at odds yet, but I'm going to assume that I've, up to this point, had mostly favorites. I'm going to take my first underdog in Alexander Volkov, taking on Cyril Gane. Gane, great when he's out, although very inactive. He thinks he's entitled to these title shots. The heavyweights coming up have been fairly hungry. Next to Tom Aspinall, I truly thought that Sergey was going to be one of those next top contenders. If not Tom, then Sergey. The knockout power from just a jab over and over in these first rounds was just unreal. Volkov came out masterclass. Maybe it's a little bit of that sparring history, knowing Sergey more than a lot of these other opponents. But the fact that Volkov showed up, did what he did, I'm going to take him on this and pull the upset again with Cyril Gane. I think that Gane, although very technical, different than Sergey in those ways, will use his rangy kicks. I think that Volkov will find his opportunities. In this chess match with Gane, finding that timing, checking that kick, slipping. Meanwhile, Cyril Gane's sitting here thinking about his FIFA club, thinking about acting, thinking about the belt. Well, you got to deal with what's in front of you to get to that belt, and he hasn't had to do that in a long time, so I think Volkov checks his shit. Moving on to your co-main event, it's a 5-rounder, and that's going to make a big difference. We got Shavkat Rakhmonov taking on Ian Machado, the cuck, Gary. Now, here's the deal. Shavkat's never seen a judge. Looking back at Ian Gary, he's improved a lot as a fighter, but his entry in the UFC, he wasn't just steamrolling through absolutely everybody. He had his exchanges of wars, and mostly he's up to this point lean on his striking to get him this far. With MVP, we saw something different out of Gary. Using those techniques, using the different tool sets. MVP, having good enough defense in this realm of his own. Gary having just slightly better enough to just smother, hold, wet blanket. Call it what you want, but it wasn't a dominant performance over MVP. It was Gary playing it safe to get the decision win. You cannot do that with Shavkat, and it's great that you're friends with Charles now, and he's going to be in your corner, but Charles Dubronx can't fight this fight for you, and when you're against somebody who's studied and experienced this calculated wrestling his whole life using combat sambo, you're just too late to the game, my bro. Like, anyone who thinks that Gary's going to be able to hang with Shavkat on the ground, pull the dick out of your mouth. It ain't happening, dude. It's impossible. I assure you, Shavkat will choke Gary out. In fact, it's happened in sparring. Now, Brendan Allen and the guys, they don't like to talk about what's happened in the room and so forth, but when they were talking about someone being out cold, it's likely Gary going to sleep. I ain't hearing nothing about Shavkat being knocked out in sparring. In fact, that would have broke news right away because he still is the boogeyman and no one thinks otherwise. Everyone's ducking his shit. Covington, Usman, the Ducks, Belial fucking took his toe outside, fired up a chainsaw, said, fucking that, I'm not fighting Shavkat. This dude is a gangster. So I'm not only excited for this fight for Shavkat to win via finish, but I think Shavkat's also the guy who does best utilize that new 12-6 rule set, what's considered a grounded opponent. Ian Gary's going to be up against the side of the octagon, not enjoying his life a whole lot. And again, no one's going to be in there to save his ass. Now, does he have a striker's chance? Sure. We've seen with Shavkat, striking is definitely the weakest part of his game. He is acceptable to taking damage. And if you can put a good output back and fight back a bit against the boogeyman himself, you do really alter the game. Jeff Neal had a little bit of fight in him, took some shots, but was giving them back. Shavkat started wearing out. Now, this is a 5-round fight. So, could the cardio of Gary surprise us in this fight? Sure. Do I expect it to? No. I got Shavkat under 3.5 rounds. I don't have this going to the judges. So, yeah, no biases. I'm going to take Shavkat double method submission or knockout. You already know. Let's go. Now, once again, I had to pick an underdog here on the card, and I know it's crazy to go against Pantoja, but hear me out on this. Asakura is a little different, right? He's going to have a bit more power coming down from 135 down to 125. Anytime someone's dropping down in weight class, I like to listen in a little bit more because generally they have a bit of an advantage. The thing with Asakura is, dude's got incredible power. We know he's chinnable. We know that his grappling has flaws. And so I have all the reason to believe that 9 times out of 10, Pantoja probably comes in, takes him to the ground, and does what he does best, right? Like, he's taken out the best flyweights, period, there's ever been. I think Pantoja's got, bar none, the best resume on paper, especially when you look at the accolades, the names of who he's taken and when he's taken these victories. But Asakura's got a striker's chance. We've seen this matchup before. Makes me think of Sugar and Aljo. You know, here's the star. They really want him. They're bringing him in. They're giving him this opportunity despite he doesn't deserve it. I mean, we all know Pantoja's got a chin made of granite, but it's the way that Kai fights. It's the vicious knees. It's the lethal shots that just absolutely crack. He's vicious with his ground and pound. He's incorporating body shots with his knees. He's doing absolutely everything. I especially, think that with the rule set change, as this fight progresses, I do favor Pantoja more and more, but I think with Kai coming in, he's throwing strikes a bit different than what I see Pantoja being used to. I mean, Kai's very knee heavy. He's going to the side of the body. He's ripping up all that cartilage in the ribs. Like, he's a fucking killer in all regards. But it's the exchange of, like, how does he handle Pantoja's pressure and grappling is going to really call out this fight. He could always hit that big shot. I don't think it's going to take 1 or 2 or 3 big shots. In fact, another bingo slot is Pantoja eats like 5 knees. Let's just make that a bingo slot as well because, I mean, this guy has the most incredible chin in MMA currently, I would say. Like, I honestly don't know who beats Pantoja. All right, let me redeem myself. You obviously had Max, who had the best chin, and Gaethje had the best chin. Isn't that ironic? And then, oh yeah, Ilya. Yep, fucked up Volk's chin a bit. Well, Islam started that whole thing. Dan Hooker, that man still got his chin. But next to Dan Hooker, Pantoja, 2 gangsters, made of granite. I think it takes the knees and the elbows. Excuse my French there. Also, fuck the French. Let's go, Brian Battle. I'm so pumped for this one, y'all. All right, make sure you get a friend, family member, somebody. Don't watch this one alone. Bingo cards coming to you soon. UFC cards coming to you soon. Gonna have this video compiled together. Really appreciate the love over on YouTube. Really trying to pick it up. As always, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.